What is up, my friends? How's it going? And welcome to the first episode of the Tactical Guide series with your fellow comrades Summary. In this series, I will be going through the various combat aspects of Rome 2 Total War, Divide et Impera. Some of these aspects include but are not limited to the various faction unit rosters and my personal recommended army compositions for these factions. We also will be learning how to analyze unit stats in depth, as well as subsequently determining the various roles and purposes each unit can fulfill on a battlefield. Speaking of roles and purposes of units, I also will be covering how I recommend to use special units such as elephants, chariots, camels, and so forth in a battle, as well as I will also be covering the fairly standard units like melee infantry, front of the line spear infantry, support spear infantry. There are a lot of different unit types that you guys who already play Rome 2 are fully aware of. Another thing I will be showcasing in this series is how I manage my armies, how I deploy them, how I group them, and the reasoning behind why I group them like so. I highly recommend that you guys learn how to group your armies because unit groups are really important for macro and micro management of your armies. I also will be showcasing all the short keys that I use to quickly deploy my armies, move my armies, as well as micro my armies. And I will share with you some tips and tricks of what unit keys you can use that are useful for certain unit types. However, without any further ado, let us hop right into the first episode of this series. So before we can jump into a battle and have a look at how I manage armies and various units, firstly we need to understand how to evaluate what exactly a unit can do, what role and what purpose it can fulfill on the battlefield. And in order to do so, we need to have an in-depth understanding of unit stats. And for most of you who play Rome 2, you'd be like, yeah, I kind of already know what these stats mean. And that is true. At a surface level, we all pretty much know what these stats mean. We know that melee attack means a chance of a successful hit on the enemy when the unit is engaged in melee and so forth. And for those of you who don't know, you can just quickly mouse over all of these stats and it kind of gives you a very helpful tooltip which kind of explains on a surface level of what is going on. However, we are going to look at these stats in depth. What I mean when I say in depth is that what exactly is this 13 number of melee attack and how exactly does it affect melee defense? What exactly are these two weapon damage values and how exactly does it affect the unit health and how exactly does armor factor in to protecting a unit and so forth? What do these bonuses mean and what exactly do they give a bonus to? So these are things I didn't really know until quite recently, and that is because I have the privilege of being a sub-modder and support modder for Divide et Impera, and as such I get a lot of access to the main modders of the team, such as Cam and Q Sartorius, who have actually entirely overhauled how combat works in Rome 2 Total War. For most of you who have played vanilla Rome 2 Total War, you will know that combat in Divide et Impera feels a lot more natural, slow. It encourages a lot of reactionary tactical decisions and so forth. And I really do enjoy combat in Divide et Impera as opposed to what it is in vanilla Rome 2 Total War. However, without any further ado, let us knock out one of these statistics one by one, and I will try my best to explain to you right here how these stats kind of interact with each other. So beginning with, we have melee attack, and now all units in the game have a base melee attack chance of 10%. This 13 number right here pretty much means 13%, which is added on top of that 10%. So no matter what number you see right here, just quickly add 10 to it and you're looking at a 23% chance of landing your melee attack. If I move to this unit, immediately I can say that it's got a 25% chance to land its attack. Meanwhile, if I look at the Indian Warrior Guildsman, it also has a 25% chance to land its attack. Now, when it's trying to land its attack, the defending unit let's say, for example, this Morian armored spearman has a melee defense of 19, and basically this is subtracted from the chance to attack. So if we take into account the Morian Imperial Infantry with a melee attack of 23, 13 plus 10, attacking the Morian Armored Spearman with a defense of 19%, then you are looking at a net total of 4% chance for the Morian Imperial Infantry to land its attack onto the Spearman. However, there is also a base minimum chance to land an attack in Divide et Impera, and that is at 5. So it won't exactly have 4%, but rather 5% chance to land its attack. Now, once it lands its attack, we do have these stats that we need to look at, which is basically weapon damage and melee armor penetration damage. Each unit in the game has a health point system, and when these health points reach a value of 0, the unit in the battle actually dies. So pretty much depending on the type of unit, health points can vary. Most infantry have around 70 to 80 health points, whereas elephant units like the Morian Royal Elephants have a HP or a health points of 900. So you can see how powerful elephants can be. Right, so speaking of the weapon damage, the weapon damage is never applied to the health pool directly, and it has to actually interact with armor. So how exactly does this interact with armor? So you do deal 25 weapon damage if your attack lands, and pretty much armor, let's say the armor value of this spear unit is 25. So this unit has a chance to roll, and this is purely RNG based. It has a chance to roll anywhere between the numbers of 1 to 25. That is 1 being the lowest armor value to 25 being its highest armor value. So if it rolls, let's say perhaps a 15, then 15 is subtracted from the weapon damage that this unit over here can deal, which is pretty much 25. So this unit will deal 10 damage to the health pool of this unit if the roll of armor from this unit is 15, right? Next on, we'll move to melee armor penetration damage, and as you can see, this unit has 7. And this damage is applied regardless of the armor of the defending unit. And so melee armor penetration damage can be incredibly useful, especially against highly armored targets. Melee armor penetration damage isn't all that useful against units that have 1 armor, which is basically no armor, because they will regardless always roll 1. However, the reason I say that melee armor penetration damage isn't going to be as effective on low armored units is because typically units with high melee armor penetration damage have low overall damage. What I mean when I say low overall weapon damage is that their weapon damage as well as their armor penetration damage, right, when combined, gives a value of 32. However, when you look at units that typically don't have a lot of armor penetration damage, they tend to have a much higher total. However, when looking at the Morian faction isn't really a great example because most of their units have good armor penetration damage. However, looking at this unit over here, the Morian Elite Warriors, you can see their total is 32. Whereas over here we still do have 32, so it's not a bad unit actually. I mean, even against low armored targets. However, once these damage is applied to a unit, the unit starts to lose some of its health points. So let's say this unit over here, as we discussed, deals a damage of 10 as well as the unavoidable melee armor penetration damage of 7. That's a total of 17. So now the new health point of this unit over here is going to be 80 minus 17, which leaves you at about 63, right? And once this value 63 reaches 0, then the unit on the battlefield kind of dies, and sometimes you might get lucky and see a pretty cool animation, but for the most time they die from a very heart attack like animation, you know. And that's not really Divide et Impera's fault. It's actually kind of like a CA thing, and like, you know, how matched combat works in the game and how it kind of you know, really makes the game choppy if you kind of try to make every kill look cinematic. However, enough waffling about cinematic kills. Let's move on to the next stat that is of importance, and that is pretty much the bonuses that you see over here. Now, how exactly do these bonuses factor in? So let's take this infantry scenario, right? So this unit, the Mauryan Imperial Infantry, has a bonus of 2 versus infantry, and this bonus value applies to its melee attack. So previously we determined that the chance to hit was 4% and therefore 5% being the lowest, so it will attack 5% of the, does have a 5% chance to land its attack. However, this bonus does add a 2% to the melee attack. So you're looking at a melee attack total of 25%, subtract 19%, and you get a melee attack chance of 6%, right? Meanwhile, this bonus versus infantry also adds a bonus to the weapon damage of the unit. So the unit can do 2 weapon damage extra in addition to this 25. So you're looking at 27. And in the example I listed, it would not be 10 damage, but rather 12 damage. Add that with 7, you're looking at 19 damage. So instead of the spearman's health pool dropping to 63, it will drop to 61. So as you can see, pretty much this is how melee stats kind of work in game. Some of these bonuses, especially for the Mauryan factions, as you can tell, are incredibly powerful. You do have a bonus versus elephants of 15, and what that actually means is that your melee attack chance versus elephants is going to be 15 plus 13 plus the base of 10. So you're looking at 28 plus 10, that's 38% chance to hit elephant units. And for most of you who know, elephant units don't have all that much melee defense. So you're looking at 38% chance to hit the elephant minus 8% melee defense chance, and pretty much that means you have a 30% chance to attack the elephant unit, and that is pretty strong for Et Impera standards. Apart from that, you also get a bonus 15 weapon damage against elephants, so that takes up the total weapon damage from 25 to 40, which is a lot, right? So some of these units can really do well against elephant units, like the Maceman over here is another good example, as well as, you do have the Indian Warrior Guildsman. Next up, I also want to talk about the charge bonus. So if we look at the charge bonus, right? Charge bonus is pretty much similar to the other bonuses you see here. However, it only applies when 2 units meet on a charge. Let's say 1 unit charges into the other unit. It doesn't require both units to charge at each other. The charge bonus pretty much applies this bonus in the same fashion as the bonus versus infantry, cavalry, or elephants. So you do get an additional chance to land your melee attack. So that would be 24 plus 13. So you're looking at 37 plus 10, which is the base rate. You're looking at a 47% chance to land your attacks, and this bonus lasts for 7 seconds immediately after your charge has been executed, right? Apart from that, it also adds this 24 bonus to your weapon damage, so you're looking at 49 charge bonus. So it is pretty powerful. I mean, like, if you're looking at 49 charge bonus, 49 weapon damage, right, and 7, so that is a total of 50, why is my math off, 56, right, plus 2 because bonus of infantry. You're looking at 59 weapon damage, right, on the charge. And now let's say this unit lands a hit on the armored spearman, and the armored spearman rolls a 1. So you're looking at 59 damage minus 1, that's 58 damage. And straight up, you have taken more than 50% of the health pool of this unit. So charging is fairly powerful in the game. However, certain units like the armored spearmen do have formation attacks, and while in formation, they can't really charge, so they don't really get their charge bonus. So I wouldn't actually recommend charging units like this. However, conversely, when in formation, they can reflect the charge bonus of an enemy unit charging onto them. Like some other examples of units that can do this are hoplite phalanxes, spike phalanxes, and so forth. So pretty much if I have this unit in a defensive formation, And this unit over here, the Mauryan Imperial Infantry, is charging against this unit. This charge bonus of 24 will not go to the Mauryan Imperial Infantry, but will rather go for the next 7 seconds to the Armored Spearmen. And as you can see, the Armored Spearmen would benefit greatly from a plus 24 chance to hit in a melee attack, right? As well as almost doubling their weapon damage, and in fact actually doubling their weapon damage to 48. And in some cases, the more the charge bonus is, the more powerful these units in formation attack can be. As if you look at the example of the Gadadasta Yodha or the Mauryan Heavy Macemen, they have a charge bonus of 38. So imagine all of that being kind of awarded to the enemy unit and being reflected back onto them, right? However, this only applies in the case that they are being charged frontally. If they are being charged from behind, they kind of lose that ability to kind of reflect that charge bonus back onto the unit that charged them, right? Another thing when we talk about melee defense is that when you mouse over melee defense, right, you do have two values, which is basically the base value of 12 in the case over here, and the shield value of 7. And the shield value of 7 only applies if the unit is attacked from the shield side or from the front. So if you attack this unit from behind, its melee defense is pretty much going to be 12 instead of 7. So that's almost like, I would say, 66% of what it could be, right? So 19 versus 12, that's 66%. So it's 33% lower than what the maximum this can be. So you kind of have to protect your spearman unit at all times with support troops and so forth, so that an enemy doesn't negate its melee defense advantage, as pretty much spear units in the game pretty much offer you that melee defense. They can hold the front line. However, if they are flanked and surrounded, then they become fairly useless, right? As opposed to infantry units which are a lot more forgiving, in my opinion, right? Like, they can be charged from behind, and they don't take a lot of penalties for that. They can quickly turn around because they don't have a lot of formation attacks, especially with melee infantry. I mean, some melee infantry do have formation attacks, however most do not, so they can quickly about face the enemy and gain that melee defense back, right? Which is another reason why melee units are actually really good in siege battles, because they can scale the walls and then pretty much fight in all directions and do quite well in comparison to spear units. So in your armies, you definitely kind of need at least 2 melee units with decent defense stats, a shield, good armor rating, so that these are the units that can scale the walls. The shield is quite important to blocking missile damage, which I will be coming to in a moment. So we have completed pretty much what we had to say about melee. Now let's move on to missiles. So when we look at missiles, there is no melee attack or melee defense that comes into play. However, each unit does have a chance to block missile units, and the base value is 15. So a unit without a shield has a chance to kind of block or dodge a missile. I mean, guess he kind of sidesteps away from the missile. It is what it is. I mean, there is a base value of 15%. So pretty much if a unit of 200 archers lands all their 200 missiles on an enemy unit, 15% of those won't actually land. So you're looking at about 170 arrows kind of landing on their target. Apart from that, we do have units with different shield values and chance to block missile values. I mean, the smaller the shield, it's quite obvious, the lesser the values, and these values kind of range from between 40% block chance to 75% block chance. Unfortunately, you can't really see it in the game. However, you can quickly hop on to the Et Impera unit database page and kind of have a look at what are the block chances, or the missile block chances as they are called. Another way to look at it is obviously download RPFM, which is a pack file manager through which you can actually open and inspect the values in the mod itself and kind of understand what are the different types of shields and how much of defense versus missiles do they offer you. However, the missiles that do manage to get across, right, they do deal missile damage. And missile damage, again, if you mouse over it, is divided into two: base damage and armor piercing damage. And pretty much the whole equation with armor then plays out again. So if the missiles land onto a target, let's say the target has 75% chance to block missiles because they have a pretty good shield, like our Morian armored spearman over here, right? It does have a shield of 7. And what this usually means, in my experience, is that with this shield value, they should have somewhere around a 70% chance to block incoming missiles. I mean, don't take my word for it. I don't remember off the top of my head. However, I do believe it is around 75, not less than 60, all right? Should be around 65 to 75% block chance. And what that means is that if these 200 archers are firing at these spearmen, 75% of their arrows are not going to land on the target, right? Like, I mean, it's not exactly 75% because each unit takes an individual kind of probability, but you see what I'm saying. Like, it's a good portion of missiles that won't land on the target. However, the missiles that do land on the target will undergo the whole calculation of, the armor roll, as well as, and so eventually the unit kind of deals damage in the same way a melee unit would deal damage against a unit. Next up, we can talk about the unit speed, and unit speed is quite important in my opinion because unit speed pretty much determines how much mobility your army has. However, it is fairly straightforward. I don't think I really need to explain that much of what exactly speed does. But a common misconception, and in fact a misconception that I had, is that unit speed actually correlates to, how effective your charge is. And that's not true, because a lot of the people on the forums kind of say that charge is equal to unit mass plus speed, right? Or I'm sorry, unit mass times speed, right? And it's not this speed that it's calculating over here. So like, let's say you have a shock cavalry over here, the late armored cavalry, and you have, let's say, this Indian auxiliary cavalry, right? And the speed of this cavalry is 7 and this cavalry is 6. So if their mass is the same, then technically this lighter shock cavalry should end up doing a lot more damage on the charge. However, that is not true because the actual speed that people are talking about on the forums is once again not visible in game, and it in fact is not even visible on the website. Pretty much like unit HP and unit mass is not visible on the Et Impera website. The only way to kind of dive into these stats is to download RPFM, open up the pack file for the mod, and look at the battle entities table in the DB table or the DB folder of the mod file, right? Now, pretty much off the top of my head, if I remember, the unit mass for the elephant unit, especially the Indian elephants, as they are considered the heaviest elephant or the heaviest battle entity period in the entire game, is 450, right? And their charge speed is 7, right? Not 5. This is their movement speed. Their charge speed, just before charge, you will see that animation that they are moving a lot faster than they are while they are running, right? They're just like charging right in there. So you're looking at 300 times 7, which is 2100 damage, right? So it's quite a lot of damage, right? Meanwhile, if you look at the late Indian armored cavalry, most cavalry have a unit mass of 100 to 150 at best. I believe the Nicene cavalry is one of the best in terms of unit mass. They are one of the best shock cavalry as a result of, right? So you have, let's say, 100 unit mass for this unit, and its charge speed is 10, right? So that's 100 times 10, 1000 damage. So the elephants do 2100, and cavalry over here does just 1000, right? So that's pretty much half of what elephants can do. So you can see why elephants are super powerful on the charge, and they can pretty much fling units in all directions, right? So I guess with that, we are pretty much done with how stats work in game, how they interact with each other. If you have any further questions, feel free to comment in the comment section down below. And I feel I have covered pretty much everything to do with unit stats. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and end the video. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. If you liked the video, then please like the video and don't forget to subscribe if you're interested for more such videos. Peace and love.